Now, Trump has threatened to end the Gaza ceasefire and unleash hell if all the hostages aren't back by noon on Saturday. His comments came after Hamas said its handover of hostages this weekend will be postponed until further notice. These are cruel games that Hamas has now been playing for 16 months, and it was able to get away with playing these cruel games under the Biden administration. But not anymore. Trump is one of the only world leaders showing genuine strength and leadership, particularly when it comes to terrorism. And he said, if all the hostages aren't back by the weekend, they'll be hell to pay.
Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out.
And once again, Trump spoke about the hostages who were released on the weekend, who were emaciated and they looked like concentration camp survivors. He said he was worried how long the other hostages, still held captive, would be able to stay alive.
It looked like something out of the 1930s. It's an absolute disgrace. What you see is probably the best because they want to send people that look at least healthy. And that's not healthy. These people have been badly hurt, mentally and physically. And I think Hamas is looking at that and saying, well, it's not going to get much better than that because they probably send out their best as a representative.
And I agree with his comments. It is a serious concern that the remaining hostages who are alive won't stay alive for a long time, given Hamas has been starving and torturing them. The international community should be worried about this. But no statement from the United Nations today, despite the fact that innocent lives hang in the balance. Israel's Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister Sharri Markson demanded the international community step up.
The pressure of the international community and humanitarian efforts need to be ramped up on Hamas so they release the rest of the hostages right now.
If only the international community cared. There are still 73 hostages remaining in Gaza, although not all are alive. Hamas's military wing has blamed Israel for violating the terms of the ceasefire when it did say that it wouldn't be releasing any more hostages this week. But of course, that was a nonsense excuse. The Times of Israel reports that Hamas claimed Israel wasn't allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza, but that it was not immediately clear what Hamas was referring to in its comments about humanitarian aid, which has been entering the Strip in great quantities. Now, in reality, like Donald Trump suspects, it's likely that it's because the hostages are in such weak, poor condition and Hamas is too embarrassed to release them. And that's saying something because Hamas wasn't too embarrassed to slaughter babies in their cots on October 7. Now, we know there have been reports that Hamas was trying to fatten up Eli, Ohad and Or before their release last weekend. They were suddenly trying to feed them after extreme starvation for 16 months. Former Labor MP Michael Danby agrees that this is most likely why Hamas doesn't want to release any more hostages. And here he was making what I found to be such a heartbreaking point on Chris Kenny earlier.
The reason Hamas cancelled the ceasefire in the last few hours, Chris, is because they're afraid of the reaction of the rest of the world when they send the rest of the hostages back in boxes, particularly coffins with those two little children and their mother in it.
And that is such a horrible and tragic thought. It is the moment we've all been dreading, but we know is coming. In recent weeks, we've been able to get a good look at these bloodthirsty terrorists. These monsters have been hiding like cockroaches in the web of tunnels underneath Gaza. They're such cowards that they don't show their face. And they've only emerged in public now that there's a ceasefire. Instead, they've preferred in the past to put innocent civilians in harm's way. It's all part of their deliberate military strategy to have Palestinians killed so that the international community turns against Israel in outrage. But that strategy isn't going to wash with Trump. If the terror group does not release the remaining hostages, all of them, Trump says, and this includes the Bibas children, by midday on Saturday, then the president says there'll be hell to pay. Now, Hamas should have been made to pay hell for what they've done a long time ago, instead of being mollycoddled by the international community. But finally, Hamas is now on notice, and it's not a moment too soon.